What's up, guys? This is Rise and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be taking you through 5 teams that you could potentially use in Ultra Premier Classic, the league that just went live about an hour ago from the time I'm recording this video. One of the most common things I get asked is, Rise, what team should I run? What's a good team to use? And I'll be showing you 5 teams that you could potentially use in Ultra Premier Classic. And this league, if you're not familiar with it, it's 2500 CP, right? With the Ultra League, that's always going to be the CP limit. And then you also are not allowed to use legendaries, mythicals, or XL Pokemon. So anything powered up past level 40, like a Galarian Stunfisk would usually be for Ultra, is not usable. And then you also have things like Registeel, a legendary, or Mew, a mythical, that are not allowed as well. So we are going to show you 5 teams. They're not necessarily the top 5 teams. And if you're wondering how I got here, I just go to pvpoke.com, and it's probably the best resource for learning about matchups and just overall increasing your knowledge of Pokemon Go PvP. So we are going to go to the team builder right here. This is all from the phone. You can also do this on a desktop. Excuse me. And for the first team, we're going to look at the team that I hit #1 on the global leaderboard with last season, of Charizard, Snorlax. Oh, already made a mistake. We want to be in the Ultra League Premier Classic, not the Great League. So Charizard, Snorlax, preferably the Shadow. If you have the normal, that's fine too. And then Venusaur. We plug those 3 in. We rate the team. And we look at the rating. So it gives us an A in terms of coverage, which personally I think is the most important rating. If your coverage is good, your team should be viable. For bulk, it gives it a D. So if you're a newer player, you're struggling to climb ELO, maybe this team isn't the one for you, because I feel like you have to have good energy management and shield management in order to use a team that doesn't have great bulk. Because Pokemon that are a lot tankier, like a Azumarill, for example, in the Great League, are a lot easier to run because they can absorb moves really easily, and it becomes less important where you expend your shields. So, yeah. And then for safety, it gives it an F, which I disagree with. This team has very unsafe matchups. It relies heavily on winning the lead. I don't agree, because Snorlax is a really good safe swap, and it can usually draw a shield, especially if they swap in like an Obstagoon. Like, you might get both shields from superpowers. So I disagree with the safety. It's probably talking about Charizard and Venusaur specifically, since Venusaur and Charizard are 2 Pokemon that can get really hard walled by certain things. Like if you have an Aggron, that's just going to destroy your Charizard. If you have a Talonflame or, I don't know, a Drifblim, that's going to like destroy the Venusaur. That's probably what it's talking about there. And then a B for consistency. And then we look at the potential threats here. Looks like Dragalge. Yeah, Dragalge would be tough. But again, no XL is allowed. And I believe Dragalge would be under-leveled, right? If it was in this league. Yeah, it'd be a little bit under-leveled. So you're probably not going to see too many Dragalges, since it would be under-leveled. Blaziken, I mean, Charizard does fine against Blaziken. The back 2, yeah, they could fight back with their charge moves, but Blaziken would be a little tough. Goodra, yeah, Goodra also a good core breaker, but you gotta keep in mind, like, these are the very top threats. It says Talonflame. Talonflame's a little bit of a sim hero. I don't think it's too problematic for this team, and also Talonflame would be under-leveled as well. Be 2205 CP. So like, how many Talonflames are you gonna see? Probably not too many. So overall, I think this is a strong team. I reached #1 on the global leaderboard with it, so it definitely can work. And with that said, we'll move on to team number 4. And I know I'll get a lot of questions like, what, Rise, can I use this instead of, can I use this Pokemon instead of this? This is all relatively flexible. Building a team isn't an exact science, right? So if you don't have a Snorlax or a Shadow Snorlax, you want to use your normal Snorlax. If I plug that in, look, it's like the same ratings, and the bulk actually went up from a D to a C. So perfectly viable. Or Rise, I have Dragon Breath on my Charizard. Can I use Dragon Breath instead? Plug that in. Still has good ratings. The consistency went up even higher. And some of those dragons are now no longer among the top threats. But then we're a little bit weaker to things like Heracross, right? Because we don't have a fire type fast move anymore. So this is all flexible and things you can adjust as you like. And as we go to the next team, what do we got? All right, this one is supposed to be a little bit funny with the new additions over the past few months. Trevenant, Walrein, and anything. I was going to say literally anything because these two make up such a strong core. But one pet peeve I have is when people say literally and they don't, it's not actually literally. Like, this pepper was so spicy, I literally thought I was going to die. Like, no, you probably didn't literally think you were going to die. You're just speaking like figuratively, but you're saying the word literally. So that's why I didn't say literally anything. I just said anything. We got the little, who's that Pokemon silhouette? But if you plug in just these two, Trevenant and Walrein, you've got an A in coverage. That's how crazy this core is. You look at the top threats. These are the only Pokemon that beat both of these in the one shield scenario. Pangoro, Obstagoon, Zangoose, Stoutland, Lapras, and Scrafty. That is wild. So just looking at these, I would say like a Charmer would cover most of them. So what are the top? Oh, or a fighter that, especially a fighter that resists fighting like Heracross, makes a lot of sense. So like, if we put Heracross in here, and like this would be kind of weak to Charizard, but we plug in Hera, still at an A. And look, there's actually not a single Pokemon that beats all three of these, at least in the one shield scenario. Pidgeot would definitely be tough, right? Because Pidgeot would just shred through two of your Pokemon. So you would kind of have to lead Walrein and then like lure it out with a Heracross safe swap. But look at that. Threat score of 498. That's pretty insane. And anything below a 500 threat score is pretty ridiculous. That means your team has excellent coverage. So there we go. Trevenant, Walrein, they cover the meta so well, man. And you guys are going to be seeing a lot of Trevenant and Walreins, I think, in the meta. So it's important that you run teams that are viable against those teams. So every team I have from this point forward, I mean, there's a lot of plays throughout a game, right? So they're not necessarily going to beat a Trevenant Walrein core, but they at least have a lot of play against a Trevenant Walrein core. So we go to team 3. And once again, these are in no particular order. And we've got Obstagoon, Swampert, and Nido. So let's plug this in. Obstagoon is one of the few core breakers to Walrein and Trevenant. And we've got the Nidoqueen in back because I think a lot of people might pair those two with a Charmer, like a Togekiss. So it's important to have like a hard answer to that Charmer. That's an interesting... Oh, because it can't be XL, right? Yep, makes sense. And we rate this team, and we've got B for coverage, C for bulk, C for safety, and B for consistency. Take a look at the top meta Walrein. We've only got one hard answer for it, but Swampert can kind of hold its own. I mean, if you land that Earthquake, it's still going to do heavy damage. And then Nidoqueen, yeah, definitely a bad matchup for Nidoqueen there. Nidoqueen can hold its own against Trev. Obstagoon hard walls the Trev. Goodra looks like beats all three, but once again, like Obstagoon and Nido, those are pretty neutral matchups. Swampert would struggle a little more. We look at the biggest potential threats. Poliwrath, yeah, that makes sense. Poliwrath would be tough for this team, especially with like Scald and Dynamic Punch. Goodra, Flygon. I don't know how many Flygons you're really going to see. And Gallade, it says it beats all three because these are in the one shield scenario. So it's assuming the Gallade baits the Obstagoon with a Leaf Blade and then lands the close combat because the Obstagoon doesn't shield. But realistically, if you're an Obstagoon against the Gallade, you're probably just going to commit shields and just win the 2 shield very comfortably while the Confusions are doing next to no damage. So you always have to take the Sims with a grain of salt. Talonflame as well, for example, like the Sims are going to say Talonflame beats Swampert because it's going to bait with Flame Charge. it's going to shield a Hydro Cannon, take a Hydro Cannon, and then land the Brave Bird. So yeah, Talonflame wins the 1 shield. Swampert probably wins the 0 and the 2 shield. And there we have it. And you can also scroll down further, and it'll give you potential alternatives. And of course, Trevenant. It's so good. One of the potential alternatives here. So a strong team there. We've got 2 teams remaining. Team number 2. A pal of mine in the community, Softoph, I think ran this team. And I ran a team pretty similar to it as well. With Gliscor. Mr. Gliscor. You can also run the Shadow Gliscor if you want. One major reason I was running Shadow Gliscor was because it one-shots, it essentially one-shots G-Fisk plus the wing attacks, versus a normal Gliscor. You kind of have to Earthquake and land a Night Slash. But now with no G-Fisks really in this classic meta with no XLs, no XL levels at least allowed, you're not going to see as many G-Fisks. So we rate this team, and we got an A, B, C, B, so some really solid ratings. We got 2 answers for the Walrein, which is nice, because if you're going to lead the Gliscor and you see a Walrein lead, you're going to need to have 2 responses. So you probably safe swap Lapras in that scenario. Try and flip switch if you can, or get shield advantage. And Lapras is a really solid safe swap because it's very tanky. So Pokemon that hard counter it, like Obstagoon or Machamp or Heracross, like it's going to be able to absorb some damage and get off some moves of its own. So if your opponent's a little bit slow on the swap with like a Machamp, for example, you might get off 2 Surfs and actually force a shield and take a shield advantage. And yeah, that's it looks like Mr. Rhyme is actually one of the top threats, and that's kind of funny. Mr. Rhyme would wreak some havoc against this team, that's for sure. But I doubt you'll see too many Mr. Rhymes. Shout out to Jamie from Ballot, who just hit Legend, by the way, I saw on Twitter. He likes his Mr. Rhyme. Goodra. Yeah, Goodra would be tough, but I think certainly playable. I mean, Gliscor is pretty neutral against Goodra. And then Lapras, I would even consider like a positive matchup. So you can actually click on these dots, and it'll show you the simulation in the matchup. So Goodra versus Lapras. Looks like Goodra wins the 1 and the 2 shield, but that is baiting with Muddy Water and landing the power-up, so it's probably a bait-dependent matchup. And yeah, so I would say like the Sims say Goodra beats Lapras, but I'd say that's a pretty even matchup. And a strong team. Strong team for sure. Escavalier as well would be a little bit tough, but hopefully if you lose the lead, you can swap Lapras, lure out the Escavalier with your Lapras, and then the Venusaur avoids it. And we've got 1 team left. And this team belongs to a man by the name of Wholesome _. And he has been running this team for many seasons now, and has consistently been able to climb towards the top of the GBL leaderboard with this team. And I'm not sure the ratings will necessarily be that strong with this team, but it has proven to be effective, and I have run it myself. And if I'm like struggling in the Ultra Premier Classic League, and I decide like I'm just gonna run something that's safe, that has a lot of neutral play, that I think could be effective, maybe help me get some wins, sometimes I turn to this team, the Wholesome team. And let's see what the ratings are. C, pretty much across the board, because a lot of these Muck and Snorlax are kind of similar with things they're going to beat and things they're going to lose to. Not all the way, but Snorlax also is so neutral that it's not going to hard beat anything. Or that's not true. I guess the Ghosts, it's going to hard beat, but Snorlax is pretty neutral across the board. So less so than a Pokemon like Machamp that's just going to destroy like Dark types and Steel types. Snorlax is going to be a little bit more neutral across the board. So the rating's not the best, but let's take a look. Let's take a look at how it does against the top meta. Walrein. I mean, all 3 of these Pokemon have play against Walrein. Machamp's definitely going to beat it. And then Muck and Snorlax says they lose. But how about this? How about if we change it to Shadow Snorlax? What happens? Our bulk rating went down. But, okay, Shadow Snorlax still loses, unfortunately. But, we have 2 really strong answers to Trevenant, which is nice. So in case we see a Trevenant in the lead, we can swap our Amok. And we look at the biggest threats. Swampert is tough, but honestly, like, remember, these are just the 1 shield scenario. So Machamp can beat Swampert just by expending 2 shields, come out with energy. Nidoqueen, I would say, even though it's ranked the 2nd biggest threat, I would say Nidoqueen is probably the biggest threat to this team, just because it's pretty dominant against Machamp. Muck is not a comfortable by any means, not a comfortable matchup by any means for Muck, since the Nido is going to double resist the poison jabs, and then you have that earth power coverage. And then Snorlax as well. It's not like you have really a hard answer to the Nidoqueen. So like, if they swap in the Nidoqueen, you probably have to swap in your Snorlax, and you unlikely are going to win that matchup because they could just keep debuffing you. So I think the best thing you can do when you see a Nidoqueen is swap and try and take shield advantage, because you're going to just have to chip it and tag team it rather than like letting it run through your whole team. So Toxicroak as well is tough. The interesting thing about Toxicroak, so I've played Wholesome when I knew he was running this team, and he has like completely mastered it. It's a great example for the people that say like, Rise, do you recommend I should switch teams a bunch or I should stick with one team? This is the perfect example of a guy who's an incredible battler but stuck with one team and has learned like the ins and outs of all the matchups with this team. So I had a Toxicroak lead. I knew what his team was, and I still lost because what happened was I think I had a Drifblim in back, and he just committed 2 shields with his Machamp to basically chip down my Toxicroak to the point where the Snorlax could just like lick it down and take a move. And then my Drifblim in back had like nowhere to go. So you might say like, oh, this whole team loses to Toxicroak. I see a Toxicroak, I lose instantly. Just staying with the Machamp. The Machamp does a lot of work, and we can actually look at the sim. Let's see, Toxicroak versus Shadow Champ. So Toxicroak wins in the 1 shield pretty handedly, but oh, interesting. You go to the 2 shield. How much health does Tox have left? A little bit more health than I thought. What's happening here? Cross chop, cross chop. Oh, it's saying the Machamp doesn't get to a 3rd cross chop. I guess that makes sense. What if the Machamp has like better IVs? Maximize IVs. I guess it probably comes down to like a sneak in. But here's the thing. I know what's going on here. I know what's going on. Like, who's going to shield their Toxicroak against the Machamp, right? So a cross chop does a little bit over a quarter of health. Like, no one's going to shield the cross chop. They're like, I resist this. It's just a cross chop. And all of a sudden, the Machamp gets this really low. So this does it does 44 damage. And the Tox is supposed to, like, come out of this with 58 health. So, like, theoretically, you'd be at 14 health if you let the cross chop go through. But anyway, that is the team. That is 5 teams for you. That is 5 teams for you that I think can be effective in Ultra Premier Classic. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to see me do this for other leagues as well, like Open Ultra, if you want to see that tomorrow, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I can just focus more on the gameplay and the battles like I normally do. But yeah, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, comment anything you'd like down below. All comments help us out here, help our videos get out on people's recommended feeds. And all that said, thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.